And
well, my question would be about, as a Tennessean, and I know the area around Jonesboro, and I've traveled back and forth a lot. Of your neighbors, you became aware. You're probably not born and raised in Tennessee, but you've lived there a good little while. Are your neighbors not only aware, or are they becoming aware? What is happening among the locals?
Among the locals, there's more and more awareness, especially with respect, and we can segue into nuclear fuel services in Irvine. A lot has to do with corporate behavior. And when corporations act badly and are not good neighbors, and they're not the quiet types like Aerojet, surrounded by barbed wire fencing, 10 foot high, with razor wire above that,
And
we're
employees, how many?
40, 50 people?
Yeah, really a small workforce.
Uh-huh.
But you have a situation in Irwin where you've got a company called Nuclear Fuel Services.
This is all close to each other, right? This is
10 miles.
10 miles,
10
Irwin
miles
to
apart.
Jonesboro.
Which is, to be generous, accident prone. To be more precise, a bucket of bolts. 54 years old, decrepit, leaky roofs, leaks, spills, releases into the environment, such that, thanks, and this is the way we'll segue from Christian Peacemaker Teams. Christian Peacemaker Teams, like I said, Cliff Kindy is an amazing guy. Amazing. You can call anybody and they'll say, okay, Cliff. He's got this gift. He called a scientist named Mike Ketterer, who works for Northern Arizona University. He's a professor of chemistry. Mike Ketterer said, just pay my expenses to come visit, and I'll do the lab work for you pro bono.
Oh.
Sweet. So, but he told us in advance, just go ahead, take samples. So, this is how I met Hartwell Carson.
Yeah.
Hartwell
they don't know who
Carson is the river keeper for the French Broad watershed.
Okay.
And he works out of the Western North Carolina Alliance office in Asheville. And
Time check is it's about 20 after 3.
okay, and I have
Well, as long as you want, but
5 minutes, 10
technically
minutes
10,
more.
15. Yeah.
Okay. So Hartwell, another good guy, says, yes, I'll come and help you take samples. So we travel around. We meaning a colleague of mine, a new activist, relatively speaking, a woman named Barbara O'Neill, and one of the members of the Irwin community who's outraged, and we go collecting water samples, soil samples, and sediment samples from the Nolichucky River and also Little Limestone Creek, and the area around Aerojet and the area around nuclear fuel services in Irwin. So we cover Jonesboro and Irwin. Ship them off in a cooler to Northern Arizona University, and Mike Ketterer writes us back after a few days, and he said, I couldn't sleep the past 2 nights after what I found. He said, there's highly enriched uranium in Martin Creek, which was one of the places where we sampled, and in the Nolichucky River. We didn't go too far out from Irwin.
35 miles
But we also
downstream.
did upstream samples, by the way. Hey, I've been doing this close to 20 years, about 20 years now. So, and besides, I was a geography major in college, so I got to know something about this. Went through training, Sierra Club training, and various watershed groups, helped start various watershed groups. So I knew more than a little actually about how to do water sampling. So we did upstream sampling, downstream sampling. other watershed samples, just to make sure that that Mike Ketterer was going to have an adequate number of samples from within the same, more or less the same geographic area, but he would be able to, what he did was develop a signature for, and he did that by virtue of the fact that depleted uranium has a specific ratio of uranium-238 to U-235 because it's been depleted of uranium-235 compared to natural uranium. So he found natural uranium in the upstream samples. Downstream of nuclear fuel services, he finds this highly enriched uranium. Now look, ever been to the Nolichucky River or even on the French Broad?
Mm-hmm.
The French Broad is as big a river as the Nolichucky. The Nolichucky is a big river. I mean, there are some areas that are 100 feet across, 30, 40 feet deep in some big pools in the river. And in these grab samples, they call them grab samples because all you're doing is scooping some water out of the river. A scientist is able to do mass spectrometry, it's called, and find highly enriched uranium. So we thought it was bad, but we didn't know that bad.
Mm.
So then finally, these were the first samples. Then, thanks to the Christian Peacemaker teams, we were able to raise enough money to bring Michael Ketterer and his research assistant at that time to come to Tennessee, and they drew more samples. That time we went further downstream, went down toward Greenville, onto private property along Davy Crockett Lake. We went to Davy Crockett. We went to Davy Crockett Lake.
Oh.
We're talking at this point in terms of river miles, about 30, 40 river miles downstream.
Yeah.
Hartwell dives into Davy Crockett Lake. He gets sediment from down at the bottom of the lake. That too has highly enriched uranium. We ended up going. The second time that Mike Ketterer came was a few months back. We went to Douglas Lake, rented a pontoon boat, and we motored up to mile 0 in the Nolichucky. So, Nuclear Fuel Services discharges into the river at mile marker 94.6, I think it is. So, round numbers, 95 river miles downstream, there are highly enriched uranium deposits with Nuclear Fuel Services signature on it. So, you tell the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, they say, NFS is discharging within regulatory limits. You tell them about the depleted uranium found off-site and in the Little Limestone Creek, all the way to the end of the Little Limestone Creek. Aerojet is discharging within regulatory limits. But you can't tell me that 95 miles downstream,
Right.
in a massive river, with just again, we're not talking about taking gallons and gallons and gallons of water,
It's a grab sample.
The grab
almost
sample.
arbitrary.
And we just pounded a pipe into the river to take the sediment samples. A pipe.
Yeah.
And out of this massive river, and still were able to detect highly enriched uranium. You can't tell me that they have been discharging infinitesimal amounts. But it's been 54 years this company has been polluting this river. And it's been over that 54 years.
54 years.
There was an investigative report done by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in the 80s, where the author himself did some grab samples, and somehow or other he got those analyzed by the Department of Energy. you'd think that the Department of Energy would have wanted to kind of gloss over what the findings were. Based on those samples, they figured that NFS was discharging 250 pounds per year based on those samples. So within regulatory limits. But folks, the thing is, that high enriched uranium was generated by the American government with our tax money for the purpose of making nuclear weapons and also nuclear fuel for the Navy, which is what NFS does.
The Trident submarine.